absolutely baffles me that today, the present, 2022, that common sense is not so common. And just no more than an hour ago, I was with my friends, and a lot of times when my friends are arguing, I like to just sit back and listen, watch, because I guess you would call me a hyper rationalist person, or hyper rational, an overthinker. Some would say, like logical to a fault. And usually when you're watching somebody in an argument, and you're watching somebody who's very logical, you can usually see the moment where they go from logic to you know something more ambiguous. Um, and they were discussing Roe versus Wade, and that culminated in their discussions on the morality, the practicality of abortion. And so what I find interesting is the people who are happy that Roe versus Wade was overturned. You know, um, and I know I have friends that are take the side of you know the judges, and they were happy Roe versus Wade was overturned. Now, the funny thing about that is the people that I know that usually oppose Roe versus Wade, it doesn't directly affect them. And it's always funny how people who are not directly affected by something, have an opinion about it. But then again, I'm recording my opinion on it, so you could argue that it's paradoxical, or you could just call it what it is. Most of us are morons, me, myself included. But here's the thing when it comes to the morality argument that people make against abortion. They say, a fetus is a life. It doesn't have a choice. Um, to engage in to subject yourself to an abortion is effectively killing a child. And while the scientific literature is very clear on, at what point a fetus becomes a child, and that's usually at the heartbeat. Um, the people that stand on the moral argument, they tend to stop at their morality, and they don't consider that when you are suggesting somebody is wrong for getting an abortion, and you think they should, you know, have that child, and you think they should be responsible for it, that's all well and good in theory, but in practical application, what we have is a lot of people who make their decision to get an abortion, they make it based on the fact that they themselves are not well off, are struggling themselves, and they choose not to bring a child into a world just to struggle. Now, me myself, I consider that to be a noble reason to uh, terminate a pregnancy. Um, and the fact of the matter is, the people who are, pretty vocal about their objections to the immorality of, the abortion procedure, they like to share their opinions. They feel their opinions are right, and they feel that if somebody were to step in and take their rights and opinions from them, that would be un-American. Okay, granted. But I never hear anybody say, well, what would the child want? Would the child want to be born into a struggle? Now, you could make the philosophical argument that if a child is born into struggle, the child doesn't know it's a struggle. But at some point, that child does have to go out into the real world. And the real world is filled with um, constant reminders of your station, um, you know, your class. So while maybe initially your child wouldn't understand the difference between struggling and not struggling, but simply putting that child in school um, would facilitate a basic understanding of the class system. And that's just, you can just base that on clicks and preferential treatment by teachers. The fact is, I don't find it noble to argue and scream and picket in the name of a child's right to live, because the people who make that argument are arguing for the child's right to live, but not the child's right to not struggle. Now, me, objectively, if I'm thinking about it, if I were, wallowing around in the ether and I was given a choice, um, you know, I would elect that if I had to be born into, object poverty, like just a constant struggle, a constant, high stress situation. In June of 2022, in this year, there was a study done. I can't remember where the study was held, but the study found that a mother who is experiencing depression and high levels of stress um, can affect their child in a way that makes them more susceptible to mental illness in their future. And, when you take that into consideration and you consider the implications of that, and potentially, the things that we haven't figured out about a child's development in relation to the mother's mental distress, you would have to be a fool to say it probably ends there. And so when you're making the argument that you feel you're morally right in, taking a stance that women shouldn't get abortions, first of all, you're involving yourself in somebody's life that, you don't have to live their life. And I've said that before in my videos. If you make a choice, I don't have to live with that choice. So ultimately, as long as you're not hurting anybody, I don't give a shit. Now, for the people saying, oh, well, I would never get an abortion. Great. This is America. You don't have to get an abortion. If you don't believe in that, you don't have to do that. But then to involve yourself in the discussion and, to vilify women who have made that choice. And I can promise you that the women who have made that choice have not made it, easily. And if you think that the women that make the choice get off scot-free, you're very wrong. And I've seen the real mental repercussions of getting an abortion. And for the women that I've known, that I've met, that have had to take that route, it's something that they have to live with for the rest of their life. So it's it's not a Maui Beach party going on. Nobody's just, I'm sure there's obviously an exception to every rule, and I'm sure there are those women out there that just are constantly hopping on dick and then going and having abortions, like they get a free sub after 10. But for the majority of rational parents who are critical thinking, women who are thinking critically, the act of getting an abortion is in itself an act of mercy. And the thing is, making that choice requires some tough mental awareness and self-awareness. And I know I have friends that they are living with their husband, with her parents, and have 4 or 5 children. They already can't afford the children they have. They are using every government program to try to bring money in, and then I hear them say they want to have another child. Um, and they even some of my friends would take the stance. I don't believe in abortion. I think it's morally, reprehensible. And that's fine to take that stance for yourself, because that's what America's about. It's about freedom. It's about your right to, have that view. But when you try jamming that view down somebody's throat without taking into consideration their situation, their circumstances, their ability to, think critically and effectively make, when you have a child, your life as a selfish person has officially ended, and your life is no longer about what you want anymore once you have that child. And sometimes, and this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but if you yourself know that you are immature, you know that you're selfish, and you know that you're not ready to be unselfish, and you engage in, the procedure, I would argue that even that is a smart decision, because there are plenty of kids who are without parents, both parents split, their kid was given up for adoption, whatever. There are a lot of things to consider beyond your own bullshit moral compass. And when you're dealing with the life of a child, you owe it to them to think of the life they might have to live potentially. And once again, I say, if you don't actually have to deal with the repercussions of getting the procedure done, then do what you want to do, but shut the fuck up about it. I will never fucking, I think it's completely awful to shame somebody who is already making a tough choice. Um, and to shame that person when, for all you know, they might have been thinking only of the child. I myself, I would rather die myself than bring a child into this world to struggle on top of dealing with racism, bigotry. And, one of the hard things about being a parent I see is, having to sit down with your child and explain bullying. Children get bullied, explaining, how, why the African American child in class is treated differently than, you know, um, than a Caucasian child. There are, I feel that everybody making any decision, whether it's in regards to keeping a child or getting an abortion, needs to devote serious thought to both sides of the argument. But when you take a stance, and you take a stance from a place of the, an abstract place, if you are someone who is never planning on getting an abortion, you don't believe in abortion, like I said, fine. But if you're going to go out there and you're going to hold picket signs, you're going to holler, you're going to, cheer, you're going to get into debates with your friends about, you know, um, the moral implications, the, social implications of getting an abortion, then you should really be thinking on both sides of the fence, and, taking one stance on something that you know very little about. This is something that's very popular in the United States, very popular ever since Facebook culture sprouted up. People get an opinion on, sorry, it's weird. People get an opinion on something that doesn't affect them, and then they stand on moral grounds. And the reason people stand on moral grounds is one. One of a couple of reasons. One, they actually morally feel that they are on, the the right side of good and evil in relation to it. Um, but to take your opinion and to use it to look down on somebody, especially when you're not considering what they're doing, and unless you talk to these people, you don't actually know what they're doing. We'd all just be a lot better if everybody just, you know, kept to their own lane in these matters. If you want to debate these things, because I believe that debate is very important, debate is necessary. It facilitates the evolution of thought. It facilitates, gaining other perspectives and therefore, sympathizing or even empathizing. But to take a shallow view of a general situation, which by its nature, in the case of, abortion, is not a general thing. Every single thing that incorporates a person, a child, there are so many factors to consider, so many circumstances to consider. And unless you're willing to sit down and, one by one, go through things with that person and try to understand their choice, I would be more inclined to listen to an argument when, if somebody who is opposed to abortion would sit down with somebody who is not, who's had an abortion, they both sit down with a blank slate. They both go in with the intentions of maybe not necessarily changing their views, but allowing somebody to plead their case. At the very least, a personal investment of time into listening to a personal story can help you to see aspects of a situation that you maybe didn't see before. And anybody who is not willing to engage in a conversation is, in my opinion, they should be giving up their right to have an opinion. Because if you're just going to have a stupid ass opinion and you're going to spout it without any consideration for the actual, very personal circumstances that go into it, then why should we listen to you and you're voicing your opinion on the morality of it? It's, morality is a tricky game when it comes to perspective, because what is moral to one person may be immoral to another. And like even people like Ben Shapiro doesn't believe in gay marriage. And then for a person that's very rational, he then goes to, oh well, why do you not believe in abortion? Oh well, because I am, part of a religious, a sect that, is built on Judeo-Christian beliefs, and I believe that, gay people can't, procreate. That in itself does not even come close to an argument as to why you should have a voice in the fight anyway. But I have moral objections because of my faith. Your faith is fine for you, but your faith is yours. And I guess what I'm really saying is, don't complicate somebody's already complicated life with your fucking hypocritical fucking, moral bullshit. Because most of the people I meet that take a moral stance, are fucking their neighbors, they're fucking their nannies, or they're, cheating on their husbands, or they're doing something. Nobody is morally clean. Nobody's hands are completely free of, you know, immoral dirt. And, the best way to account for that is to just try to get your own life right. I don't have time to judge other people for what they're doing, mainly because I'm too busy living my own life, trying to get my own life right. And if somebody's, being overly moral and, oh, I take this stance, you know what? Ultimately, I may not agree with your choice, but I'll defend to the death your right to have it. But one thing I won't defend is using that opinion to involve yourself in the affairs of other people who are already having a tough time. You don't want to have an abortion? Don't fucking have an abortion. You want to have an abortion? You should have the right to have an abortion. And you should be able to have that right without somebody fucking picketing and protesting and calling you a baby killer. Because chances are you're already going through a shitty situation having made that choice. And, that is in itself part of making that choice. And I believe that the people that make that choice are already dealing with enough on top of the mental strain of, you know, most people you'll find don't believe that killing babies is a good thing. But then you find people who take it a step further and think and say, well, okay, well, I don't believe in killing children, but I also don't believe in raising them to be, starving, or raising them to, you know, be in a situation where they don't have any way to get medical treatment, or any number of things. The debate is so foolish, because everybody can take a general stance, and in a general view, you know, your objections make sense, but those objections go out the window as soon as you break it down to the first personal aspect of it. And I don't feel there shouldn't be any ticker tape parades for people who take moral stances on things, because taking a moral stance is done by people who actually feel they have a moral high ground and believe in that. And then there are people that take the moral stance because they feel that the moral stance is where they can stand and be right for a change. If you've never taken a stance on anything in your life, but you're choosing this to take a stance on without considering things, I'm questioning your motives. I'm wondering why you're doing this, because I've seen people take these stances just simply to fit in with their friends, and that is the exact kind of ignorant bullshit that fucking should make it completely, that should make any argument that person makes completely irrelevant. If you're not willing to sit down and acknowledge that there are other variables, and often that you can't foresee, often that the people that get abortions can't foresee, then you have no right to be sitting at the table having the discussion, because the discussion requires more thought than your Bible thumping bullshit. And I believe that everybody should have their religious faiths, and I believe that their views and their opinions on things that involve their faith should be theirs, and nobody should fuck with it. But don't fuck with somebody else's. You wanna take a moral high ground on abortion and say, oh well, the child has a right to live. You're right. The child also has a right to live without, the stress of having to, starve, having to, find food, being abandoned. Like, that's effectively what a lot of these scenarios are going to turn into if you actually go into a practical scenario. If women are forced to carry babies to term, you're going to find that a lot more children are left up for adoption, are abandoned. Now, if you think that that's not going to fuck a child up, then I would say that you haven't thought it through. It's the same kind of argument as, you know, a lot of women who haven't experienced rape, they when they look at it, forgive me for such a crass representation, but a woman who hasn't been raped, you give her the choice between rape and murder, and she'll choose rape, and that's because they haven't experienced it. Whereas you talk to women who have been sexually assaulted, and by overwhelming numbers, these women make the argument that murder takes place quickly and it's over. Rape, they have to live with for the rest of their lives. And that needs to be considered. And moreover, in the relation to the abortion debate, if a woman is raped and she becomes pregnant, and then you force her to carry that baby to term, she is living with an everyday reminder and representation of something that was probably the most traumatic point in her life. And imagine if the worst thing that ever happened to you was framed, pictured, put on your wall for you to look at every single day, for you to nurture that picture, for you to, immerse yourself in that set of circumstances for the rest of your life. It's unrealistic. It's cruel. And so because of that, take your moral bullshit, keep it to yourself, because that's your right. But when it comes to, harping on other people, making other people feel like they're less than human for making decisions that aren't easy for them to make, then fuck your views. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Don't click. Don't click like. Don't subscribe. Just treat each other well, right? People are already having a tough time without generalized ignorant bullshit coming raining down on them in the framework of holy divinity or good versus evil. Like, things are rarely that simple. I don't think things are ever that simple, except in like an Austin Powers movie or something. I don't fucking know. I know that life is complicated, and I know that people who take moral stances on things and become militant about it are usually suffering from a condition called have no idea what's really fucking going on. And take it for what it is. That's just my opinion. And you know what? Yeah, I'm a man with an opinion. I don't have a horse in the race. I won't ever have to get an abortion. But I feel that it's a woman's right to choose what she wants to do, and whatever she chooses, I feel like that she has the right and the freedom to do that without being harassed, without being, condemned. So, and that goes for women who take a moral stance. Like, if you want to take a moral stance, then take a moral stance in your own life. And should you get pregnant, you have the baby. But when it involves somebody else's life that you don't have to live, whose opinions don't affect you negatively, then shut the fuck up. Okay? I'm glad we could have this talk. I feel we're a lot closer because of it, yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't really like signing off on these videos, mainly because I'm terrible at goodbyes. So I'm just going to say, like I said before, don't like, don't subscribe. Just be good to one another. It's not that fucking hard. Use your brain. You have one. It's your responsibility to, check out the instructions, see how it works, take it for a test, and think about views beyond your own, because we all share this planet. And, we're all the same species. We should be on each other's sides, not drawing lines in the sand. And if you disagree with that, then you can best believe I sure as fuck don't care what you think. All right? XO, XO. Peace out.